Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Around the Nest, J-Talk on our way around the Toronto Blue Jays minor league organization. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Class Single-A Lansing Lugnuts. Over the course of this week's show, we'll speak with the Lugnuts who just clinched a playoff spot. We'll look at advanced Dunedin, see how everything's going with the DJs. At the Triple-A level, Devon Travis has just landed to help the Buffalo Bisons. But we begin this week with the Double-A New Hampshire Fisher Cats and Tom Gauthier. Tom, how are you?
I'm good, Jesse. I can't get the feeling, though. You're trying to get the worst part of the show over with right away, rip that Band-Aid off, and then be able to enjoy the rest of the 45 minutes or so.
Well, let's start with the good things for you. Dalton Pompey gets sent down. Began the season, then moved down to Triple-A. It sounds like he discovered his mojo with your Fisher Cats.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty fair statement. He homered in his first game back. He already has 4 home runs, which is more than he had for us in the entire 30 games he played with us last year. So if there was mojo to be found, Dalton Pompey certainly found it.
Is there any reason for this power? Is there anything new that he's doing up there at home plate?
You know, I actually haven't seen him, Jesse. I was gone the weekend that he debuted at home, and then he was on the road for 9 games, so I actually haven't had a chance to see him play yet. I saw him. He looks maybe a little more physical, but I think he had a couple of games in our ballpark where he had a home run, and then he just had a 2-homer game in Altoona. And I think that, you have guys like him with good bat speed. You get a favorable right field porch, and that's what it is in Altoona down the right field line right in the very corner. Then you have a chance to hit some home runs. But pretty much everything he's hit has been hit hard, and sometimes when you add a little loft to that swing, that's what will happen.
Pretty sizable road trip that the Fisher Cats just went on. 3 games at Akron, 3 games at Altoona, 3 games at Erie. Did you start to forget that the baseball season was going on?
Being gone for so long, I saw Bobby Meacham today. It was the first time I'd seen him in 2 weeks from being gone for that weekend on a vacation, and then the team was on the road for 9 days. They had days off in the front and in the back of that road trip, so it had been a while since I've seen baseball. But, yeah, it does feel like it takes a long time for those 11 days to go by. And I was thinking today, man, I'm glad there's a game tonight because it seems like forever since we played. But then going through the daily routines that you have on game day, I'm like, it feels like I was just doing this yesterday, even though it's been over 2 weeks in it. So there's some of the good, some of the bad with it, but it was nice for our staff because we had 13 games in 16 days on our last couple of home swings. So having that 11-day break worked out pretty nicely for everybody.
All right, now you get right back to it. The Binghamton Mets are in town starting off tonight. It's a 4-game series stretching for the weekend. Johnny Anderson goes. Johnny's a pitcher that I've been following. It's often that you hear of a guy that has to undergo 2 different Tommy John reconstructive surgeries and yet is still pursuing that dream, trying to get to the major leagues. How has he been doing?
It's one of those guys where not only the 2 Tommy Johns, but he had the elbow that broke. He had a broken elbow, which I think he did in Lansing, kind of his last go-around there in 2011. So it was really 3 lost seasons because of elbow injury. So he's been doing fine. I think that he's starting to – I think now is where you sort of expect him to make a move. I think the first couple of first probably month and a half, first 5 weeks of the season, he was really just getting back into the groove, getting back into that starters rotation because he hadn't started consistently since, 2009, give or take, where he really had a full workload because he had so much start and stop over the 10, 11, and 12 season. So, and then after that, he came out of the bullpen. So it had been a long time since he was a regular starting member of the rotation. So I think he was getting back into that routine, getting used to the workload, to that daily, every 5 days you have to pitch, getting used to all the in-between stuff. Now that I think he's used to that, I think you're starting to see a guy that he's developing, but he's still having some command issues. So when he pitched in the bullpen, that was his biggest concern, was the number of walks, and I think it's just been a consistency thing for him. He has days where he's very good, and then he has days where he'll throw a lot of strikes, but he gives up a lot of foul balls. Doesn't really have those days where he has the put-away pitch, and so when that happens, he has a hard time getting beyond the 5th inning because he throws 90 or 95 pitches in those first 5 frames.
Just thinking back to that 2009 season, you mentioned it, his last full-time year as a starter, he was the Lansing Lugnuts' number 2 starter, and the number 1 starter was Henderson Alvarez. Lets you know the generation that he was a part of. And now, these many years later, he and I were inaugural year. That was my first year with the team, too. So, interesting to watch him progress. Is there somebody else with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats? Oh, beg pardon.
I would say it's funny because you think of a guy like that and you think, man, he's been around forever. But if you look at the miles that are on that arm, yes, he's had the injuries, and I get that. But in terms of the actual shoulder joint, if you want to look at that, not many miles on it because he hasn't pitched a lot the last 5 or 6 years. So hopefully he can continue to develop and continue to get back into that groove and find ways to get some outs on 2 or 3 pitches. He is a ground ball guy. He gets a lot of grounders, and you'd like to see him get a few more of those, keep the ball down in the zone, but it has been riding high a lot on him.
Who are maybe 1 or 2 other guys who, if somebody comes out to the ballpark and says, tell me about your Fisher Cats, you wouldn't start with perhaps their prospect status. You'd say, let me tell you some great stories about the people here.
I think for the most part, to be honest with you, Jesse, there are a lot of good guys in this team, and we have guys that are, in the off season, guys like Matt Newman work for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. You have guys like Casey Hobson who spent some time growing up here in New Hampshire while his dad managed an independent league team. Of course, his dad is Butch Hobson, so he's got some stories and some big league experience there. Kevin Nolan is a kid from Nashua, just down the road, was the first ever Fisher Cat to make it, to be from New Hampshire to play for the Fisher Cats. Then you have guys, as you mentioned, the prospect status, guys like Dwight Smith Jr., guys like John Birdie, who had a great season last year, had a really slow start this year, got hot, and then got hit in the head and missed a couple of weeks of the concussion, so he's just coming back. Ryan Schimpf was here up until about 9:30 this morning. He's a guy that's always fun to watch because in this ballpark especially, he can always hit a home run. He's only a couple away from our franchise record, and he's done it basically in 2/3 of the games, about 2/3 of the at-bats, and about half of the at-bats to home run ratio than our career franchise record holder, to give you the idea as to how dominant he's been, especially in our ballpark. And then maybe the guy that's most fun in the pitching staff is I just completely drew a blank. Jimmy Cordero, when he hit 103 on our, apparently he hit 103 in the road, but he hit 101 here a couple of times during that last home.
Finally, our question of the week on Around the Nest for Tom Gauthier, voice of the Double-A New Hampshire Fisher Cats. I'm talking about weather. I'm talking about Mother Nature in terms of when it helps. In general, whenever a rainstorm comes in or any kind of inclement weather, we as baseball people working in the industry or even as fans, that dampens our entire day. Has there ever been a moment where, for whatever reason, however it might have been, that the weather has helped you out or provided a fortunate occurrence?
Yeah, I think not even too long ago, since I've been here with the Fisher Cats, we had an instance. It was 2011 or 2012 or 13. I don't remember the exact year now, but Alan Farina was on our team. I think it was 2013. Farina was closing out a game. We had gone through one of those stretches where you don't win a lot of games, and team wasn't playing all that well, and he had come on to try to get a save, and I think we had a 2 or 3 run lead, and all of a sudden he started to get wild. He gave up a home run, then gave up another home run. So all of a sudden it was a 4-run lead. It was a 4-run lead down to a 3-run lead, and we didn't have anybody out yet in the 9th inning. And so we're thinking we're in trouble because the wind's blowing like crazy. It's blowing out to right field. They had a good number of lefties coming up, so we're thinking this is going to be one of those games where we blow a 4-run 9th inning lead. Well, sure enough, they get a couple of guys on. Nobody out still. He throws a wild pitch, gets the ball back, throws another one out of the zone or something, tells the umpire that I can't throw, the ball's too wet. Umpire puts the game into a rain delay, and they end up calling it 30 minutes later. So it was one of those where I think the tying runs or go-ahead runs were on the bases. We'd already given up 2 or 3 runs in the inning, and it was dire straits, to say the least. There weren't many guys out, and we were able to salvage the win out of it, when I think just about everybody, Farina himself, thought that we were in trouble if that game had to continue.
Oh, you could find Tom Gauthier on Twitter, at TomGauthier21. Meanwhile, the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, nhfishercats.com, and they are home, and they are home for quite a while. It's an 8-game homestand, 4 games against Binghamton, 4 games against Portland. We'll see if Dalton Pompey can continue his hot streak. Listen in to the broadcasts with Tom on the call, starting at 7:05 p.m. for the first pitch this evening. Tom, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jesse. We'll talk to you soon.
From Tom in Double-A, let's move upward, up to Triple-A, and Ben Wagner, the voice of the Buffalo Bisons. Ben, what's going on?
There's a rock in the background on top of the Bisons dugout right now at NBT Bank Stadium. So if you lose me or I get summoned to the stage, I'll have to cut the interview short. My apologies, with Minnie Kiss performing in the background.
No, tell me more about this.
I don't know. We got to the ballpark today, and there was a band set up on top of the first base dugout here in Syracuse. Not out of the norm. a lot of times on Friday, Saturday nights, bands will perform in a given ballpark. Then all of a sudden I realized, wow, the stools are short, the microphones aren't very high. And then during some setup upstairs in the press box, I noticed in full makeup and on-stage apparel, Minikus strolls through the stands and does the sound check. Incredible moment. And now they're performing. They opened the gates early here in Syracuse to start the concert. Literally, concert.
This is electric. The game is going to be an anticlimax.
Yeah, pretty much. We've hit the crescendo at 5:15 in the afternoon. What happens for Matt Boyd the rest of the night is null and void.
Well, let's talk about Matt Boyd. And this has been fun for you. You get the prospect matchup of Daniel Norris against Aaron Nola, and now you get to see Matt Boyd's second start for Buffalo. How have things been with your Bisons?
So far, so good. I mean, outside the wins and losses overall, and dropping 3 out of 4 in Lehigh Valley against an Iron Pig team that really isn't nearly as good as what the Bisons are. But the bugaboo for the Herd collectively this season has been runners in scoring position and executing within those positions, and it's cost the Bison a lot of games. Now, there are a number of storylines around the team that keeps the broadcast interesting, obviously, that are very interesting from fans, from not only some of the veterans that have gone up and down, but also the prospect watch and getting Daniel Norris back on track, getting him consistent, and the arrival of Matt Boyd, who wore the carpet pretty thin in the Bison's clubhouse on Sunday afternoon, waiting through a 3-hour rain delay finally before making his Triple-A debut, and throwing really, really well while doing that. And the numbers and the strikeouts, of course, are what they are. Didn't take a winning decision, but he pitched very well. And I think with all the outside circumstances, plus then the internal battle about the emotions, the butterflies, maybe a little nervousness, and he committed an error on a throw over to first base early in that ball game, he came away fine, and I expect on a beautiful night him to be much crisper.
What is your scouting report on Matt? What is his stuff?
It's not much different than the book, honestly, and I talked to a couple of scouts to see if he's been able to develop over the course of the year, which they said he has. The changeup is, I think, the best pitch that he's got going. Fastball's good, locates well down in the zone for the most part. There were a couple of times that he slipped high in the zone on Sunday against the opponent, but I think the curveball is something that he's going to have to work in more. I think the slider's got a lot of room to improve as well. Again, that's just a little bit of an educated, but yet one man's opinion. But the fastball and the changeup do really, really good things and keep batters off balance, and that's where he can have a separator, especially at this level. If he adds the third pitch and can crisp up the slider or the curveball, now he's got an even bigger separator that may take him to the next level quickly.
You talked about the anticipation and the excitement with the fans when Norris arrived this year, Matt Boyd arrived. What's the difference between a prospect rising upward and, let's say, a major league rehabber, like, for example, Devon Travis stopping in?
You know, that's a great question. I think the anticipation of a prospect, you're allowed a lot more time, a lot more enthusiasm over the window, and whether or not that person will get promoted or not promoted. I think when you're watching a rehabber, the eye is a little bit more critical on how that person is performing. You're watching at bats, you're seeing about the timing, you're finding out if that individual is healthy. You don't want to see any sort of struggle with a veteran like a Jose Reyes, who was with us earlier in the year, or with a Devon Travis, who's having a tremendous rookie season. You don't want to have any sort of setbacks, and that's from a health standpoint. That's from just an overall eye test standpoint. I think if you really want to challenge that person, you expect some growing pains with a prospect, especially when they jump up levels. Aaron Sanchez, Marcus Stroman, they did not have smooth sailing before they got an opportunity to go to Toronto. They had a couple of lumps while they were in Buffalo, and Daniel Norris, while having a 13 strikeout performance last August before he went to the big leagues, there were a couple of blips along the way for him too, and you saw that at the big league level. And now he's trying to iron out some of those things here in the minor leagues. So I think those are the glaring differences. Speaking in terms of rehab versus prospects on the rise.
This is Ben Wagner, the voice of the Buffalo Bisons, Triple-A affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays. He talked about that 3-hour rain delay that Matt Boyd had to sit through. You guys have been affected by some rain as of late. Has it been difficult to stay in rhythm? Have there been some very long nights?
There's been some long nights, no doubt about it. Rhythm in terms of broadcast, that's where you just got to lock in and try to be sharper on the air. In terms of rhythm with the place of play for the ball club, it's been disrupted. There's been some balls that skip through the gap that probably wouldn't have on a dry night. There have been some balls that get thrown away because of moisture on the field too. So there are a couple of things that have hindered the Bisons and cost some errors for a club that had pretty good defense. The first month and a half of the season that have prolonged some things, but. Weather is just part of it. It's part of the game, and you try to fill the banter if you're killing time on the air, or work press row and talk to some scouts maybe and find out about a player that's within the organization or maybe somebody else. And this is a beautiful time of year to talk to scouts because they are pounding the pavement, and they're seeing a lot of players this time of year with the trading deadline coming up.
Well, especially once the draft comes to an end and everyone gets sent outward, we get flocked, and the scouts come from all angles. We'll just see the food in the press box might start to disappear a little bit. It gets a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, and it gives you an opportunity as well to rehash some friendships, guys that you see along the way, and you may only see once or twice a year if it's a regular scout that is on the beat or has an organization, or maybe a guy it's only dropping in to sign off on a potential move or an acquisition. Maybe you only see these guys every handful of years. There are those too, so it's always nice to get reacquainted.
One of my favorite things with scouts is just talking baseball and hearing stories. I'll give you one example. Yesterday, the Bowling Green Hot Rods in the Tampa Bay Rays system, they have a pitcher who features an honest-to-goodness screwball that he learned from Mike Marshall. And so the conversation in the press box and elsewhere was, hey, do you remember any screwballers? And then suddenly you got into telling stories about Luis Arroyo, the old Yankee, or maybe Mike Norris, the old A, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's fun because it's in today's modern technology world, you're looking and you get consumed with statistics and the portals that are available and the breakdown of different sites, Minor League Central to, of course, our Baseball Advanced Media Network. You can get so reliant on technology, you forget about what makes the game great, and that's the ability to tell these stories. And as players come and go, and as some guys, leave the playing field, go into coaching, managing, front office, or even become scouts, they carry these stories and the relationships with them as well, and they make for the best enjoyment, I think, from a listener perspective, and hopefully we're able to relay those stories and some of the laughs as well as some of the struggles and the adversity appropriately over the air.
Around the Nest question of the week, weather. We talked about what the negatives that the weather brings are. Have you seen any unexpected positive during a game or perhaps a series, whatever you've seen where Mother Nature actually helped out your team?
Well, weather has saved some pitching in my career. There's no doubt about that, where you really need a rain out because maybe doubleheader somewhere along the line backed everybody up, or maybe a guy needs to skip a start or you work one in where a guy can get refreshed as well. So there have been opportunities where players have benefited from it. I'll definitely say that. I don't know. I always hate to have weather kind of be that looming thing over a ballpark. It's not fun for the fans because there's always questions. It's very hard to navigate a clubhouse because everything is thrown out of routine, and people just kind of sit around and wait, and there's only the one burning question on everybody's mind. Will we or won't we, or where is the proverbial window where the weather may break? So all those things included make me not that big of a fan of Mother Nature stepping in, outside providing blue skies and sunshine.
My number 2 this year, David Fine, was a little bit flummoxed, and I think he's very amused by the fact I utterly ignore the radar. I sit in the booth, and if the game's on, I broadcast, and if there's no game, I've got preparation for it, but I really do not want to know. Just let's go, because otherwise it's like me as a kid hoping that it snows and I don't have to do my homework.
I always dub myself on the air as the amateur meteorological degree from the AMS service, but I like to watch it, especially if we go into a rain delay after starting, to kind of give fans least a feel for where we're at. But I'm with you. I plan on playing every day that I get to the ballpark, whether it's in the middle of the monsoon or, the radar increases the percentage, much like it has here on Sunday in Syracuse. But, there's 2 games in between then. Why are we going to worry about Game 3 when we haven't even started Game 1?
Before going down to A. Advanced and Marshall Kellner, I want to finish up with Ben Wagner in Buffalo by asking you next week. It's just a 3-game series against Lehigh Valley, and yet on Tuesday it is Irish Festival night, which just sounds wonderful. And then Wednesday, Bike to the Park night, which is a brilliant idea that I've never heard of any other team doing. Let's begin. What's going to happen on Irish Festival night?
Well, it's an opportunity for different community organizations that, with the Irish heritage, that are going to have a special night dedicated to them. We're going to have Irish-themed food available at the concession stand in our pavilion area. There will be Irish-themed music, some performances on field during the game as well. We always honor the Irish Heritage Individual of the Year. That'll be presented before the ball game as well, and we just like to have a lot of fun with it. From the theme music in and out of that night, plus what the fans are able to experience, and the coming together, if you will, annually for these organizations that have come out almost 3 straight decades and been part of this night. And it's one of the more festival nights that are enjoyable for us, but also it's one of our bigger nights, and it's a great way to kind of kick us off into festival season.
And then the very next day, will you be biking to the ballpark?
Unfortunately, I will not be biking to the ballpark at that time, but I know a host of riders will be on hand and make their way around the warning track at the completion of that, and it should be a new theme night, a new theme promotion for the Bisons at Coca-Cola Field, another addition to our promotional schedule that I think has got some serious legs. And you know what? It takes one idea, and it takes somebody that's passionate about maybe into something outside baseball or extracurricular activity, and that's exactly what Robert Cates in our front office has been able to do with him and his biking buddies. And he thought, well, if I'm so passionate about this and I've got an opportunity to meet all these new people, why not have them come to the ballpark and we can have a night out together? So Rob Cates started doing this as a movement for his own individual health, but all of a sudden he's meeting guys and gals that are passionate about it as well. And he, of course, has got one of the greatest backdrops in Western New York to complete a ride, and why not give somebody the opportunity to pedal around the ballpark at the end?
Brilliant notion. I want to hear how it goes. Ben Wagner with the AAA Buffalo Bisons. You can find him on Twitter at BenWag247, and listen to him call tonight's game, 7:05 p.m. at Syracuse. That's the main event with Mini Kiss as the undercard. Ben, thank you.
All right, rock on.
Yeah.
Chase De Jong is 1 out away from a complete game, and the Lansing Lugnuts are 1 out away from punching a ticket to the postseason. Last time the Lugs were in the playoffs was back in 2012. The pitch to Nick Schufa. A swing and a line drive to right. Davis comes in. He's there. He makes the catch. This ball game is over, and Lansing is heading back to the playoffs. It is a 9-inning complete game for Chase De Jong, the first of his career. Lansing 3, Bowling Green 1. Chase De Jong pitches the Lugnuts right back to the playoffs.
That was last night. Now I'm joined by David Fine with the Class Single-A Lansing Lugnuts. David, take me back to yesterday evening. How good was Chase De Jong?
Well, when you allow 2 base runners after the 4th inning and you only give up 4 hits and you tie a professional high with 10 strikeouts, 9 innings, and you clinch a playoff spot, pretty good, Jesse.
Chase De Jong, the Lansing Lugnuts, they're going to the postseason for the first time since 2012. The sort of team that we knew that since the very start of the season they were talented. And yet, when you joined the Lugnuts, there were only 3 games above 500. They are now 13 games above 500. Since you joined the Lugs, what did you see that helped bring them to that very next level?
I think it's the team chemistry aspect, and Chase De Jong said it best to me in the first few weeks I was with the team. He said, last year we had a more talented team. This year we have a team with better chemistry. And he said, and that goes a long way. And I think it's obvious, Jesse, just being with this club every day, that there are really no outsiders. There's no rogue personalities that can bring the team down because of the strong core. And I don't know if you were following on Twitter last night, Shane Dawson, the starter for the Lugnuts, said that this is the best group in the minors he's been with.
Actually, I'll take you a little bit behind the curtain. I was doing my best to retweet those tweets from Shane Dawson from the Lansing Lugnuts official account. I felt it was worth it to let everybody know. Talking Shane just very briefly, because there was a question on Bluebird Banter that specifically appealed right to him, related to him. That was that he was named to Team Canada for the Pan Am Games up in Toronto. What does that mean to Shane?
Oh, he's very excited about it. I saw him talking about it a few days ago at this point down in the clubhouse and saying how excited he was. It's always, you hear from these players all the time that they consider it a great honor to represent their country. It's a little bit different from our perspective, Jesse. We don't necessarily have that opportunity as broadcasters in a certain sense. And Shane, for him, it means an opportunity to go and show what he can do on a greater level, a greater stage in the Pan Am Games, much like an Olympic-like setting, provide that type of venue for him to show off his talents.
With the rest of the Lansing Lugnuts, so we know that Dawson, he's going to show off his talents in the Pan Am and also the All-Star Game. Are there other members of this team that you think have really taken that step forward like Dawson has this year?
I would say in the last few starts it'd be Chase De Jong. He was not necessarily he's not necessarily rolled through this season like a tidal wave, a continuous tidal wave, but he is sort of having peaks and valleys, and I think he's in a big peak right now. He might be worthy of being sent to Advanced Dunedin. Other players that have impressed me that I think might get called up, it's Anthony Alford, Richard Arania, and Rowdy Tellez. Elsewhere on the pitching staff, it's probably Dawson and De Jong are the two most impressive ones at this point.
It was funny. I was privy to an interview with Chase De Jong before today's game, the Lugnuts hosting the Great Lakes Loons. And over the course of that interview, without really even meaning to, Chase De Jong started naming every single teammate by name. Went around the infield and said, well, here's what this guy's providing, and here's what that player's providing. And getting back to what Shane Dawson felt, it is very apparent that all of these Lansing Lugnuts feel that it is the team aspect. It is everybody working together. And though they are individually talented, the sum of their parts is even greater.
Oh, I agree 100%. And it goes back to what De Jong had mentioned to me about the team chemistry aspect taking play, but also, Jesse, as you know, that this team seems to put up hits in bunches. If the Lugnuts might have 10 hits in a game and score 3 runs, the next night it might have 10 hits in a game and score 7 or 8 runs, and Lansing gets 10 hits quite a bit. The sum of their parts notion, there's so many talented players in this lineup that possess both power, especially in the middle of the order, but also the ability to do unique things that maybe no one else in the league can do. Tim LeCastro, well, yes, he's good at getting hit by pitches, and he leads all minor leagues with 19 hit by pitches, but at the same time, he's arguably the best base stealer in the Midwest League and leads the Midwest League in base stealing. Anthony Alford, Blue Jay fans know that his explosiveness and that he's still that he's playing the longest baseball season and is playing in the most games in a season he's ever played in his life because he played football for the majority of his life along with baseball. That limited his baseball participation, and his explosiveness and his speed. Heck, you even look at a player like Ryan McBroom, who's a prototypical cleanup hitter that is right in the league lead for doubles, and Rowdy Tellez is this big imposing figure that can knock a ball, it seems like he could hit it 400 feet on any given pitch. Chris Carlson just went 4 for 5 the other day. DJ Davis had 8 RBIs in the game, and a home run, a grand slam a few weeks ago. This sum of their parts notion, it also has to do with these guys are just really good.
That's the fun of it. You mentioned a little bit earlier those players who could be due for a promotion. And that has been a topic of conversation. Who's going to go up? When are they going to go up? That gets back to another question posed by Bluebird Banter, and that is about the half system. So the Lugnuts are in the playoffs, and yet you and I both doubt they're going to enter the postseason with this exact same roster in September. So how do you feel about that split season, postseason qualifying system?
Personally, I really like it. I think it's a great way, especially in the first half, to keep interest, not only from a listenership standpoint, Jesse, with you and I, because nothing's better than saying with 20 games left in the first half and you're in, the beginning of June or so or mid-May and you have a topic that, hey, there's only 20 games left in the first half and this team could qualify for the playoffs in the next 20 days. It's timely. But I also really enjoy the system just because it gives you something to play for, not only right off the bat of the season, but even going into the second half. But what I mean is that, let's say the Lugnuts win the division. You're talking about a potentially a new group in the second half that's still going to want to prove itself. The All-Star break kind of creates this nice, neat way of saying, okay, these players have done really well in the first half of this season. They deserve a promotion. What if it was the way that they do it in the major leagues where there wasn't that split system? What if 70 games into the season the Lugnuts were in first place, but they had to call players up because those players were just ready for a promotion? That team might not make the playoffs anymore, might not be rewarded for having great talent and great skill on the team in the first half of the season. It's just a way to split things up in such a way that it creates a logical date for players to be promoted and also reward those players for their service to maybe a lower level team beforehand.
We'll see players get rewarded. We'll see players get promoted. Of the players who won't, is there anyone that you think, okay, the first half is now behind them, and they are ready to do much, much better in the second half, whether something is clicked or whether they're simply about to take off?
I believe that Gunnar Height is that player on the Lansing Lugnuts. For those that don't know, he's a third baseman, plays a marvelous field. He's only, and Jesse, I confirmed this earlier, only 4 errors at third base and 5 total errors this season for Gunnar. And for Height, his average is right now coming into today's game, it's 177. And you hear that and you say, well, what's gone wrong? What's gone wrong is he has 3 hits in approximately his last 50 at-bats. I forget the exact number right now, but his average was sitting about 230, 240, Jesse, when I arrived to the club about a month ago. And he was a consistent 7 batter. With Jason Leblebigian sent down from the Florida State League, who's taken over that starting position and is playing every day at Height's third base spot, you don't know how long Leblebigian's going to be with the club. At the same time, Gunnar Height might, if he hits 230 or 240 by the end of the season, that might, you might look at that and say, well, he's just at 230 or 240. That means he's going to hit approximately 300 the rest of the season to get to that number. He is a player that I spotlight and that has been working very hard with Kenny Graham, the hitting coach, to just try to get better. And I think he is going to get back in the lineup more in the second half if Leblebigian is called up to the Florida State League again, and then Height can take off.
Time for our Around the Nest question of the week, which was, yes, spurred on by what happened with the Lansing Lugnuts 2 days ago, and that is with weather, which usually gets us so down during the season. When have you seen the weather actually come through and help out a team?
I have a good example of this. So last summer when I was broadcasting in the Cape Cod Baseball League, there is a field that some may know from the movie Summer Catch called Veterans Field, where the Chatham A's play. Now they're the Chatham Anglers. And that field is known for fog delays and fog outs. I remember showing you a picture a few days ago, Jesse, of a fog out in Chatham that had popped up on my Twitter feed, where it's called the fifth inning fog because the games start at 7 o'clock at home, every Chatham home game. And around fifth inning or a little bit after 8 o'clock at night, sure enough, some nights, if the wind is right and the conditions are right, that fog just settles in. And so my story of it helping a team was actually the team I was broadcasting for, where we were looking to eliminate the Chatham team from the postseason over the final 2 days of the season, and Chatham needed to lose twice in a row, and we were playing them in a home and home. And in the first game of that home and home, Orleans won 5-3, and the game was fogged out in the fifth inning. Not rain, but fog. And what was great about that was our starting pitcher had just been taken out of the game, and we had about 2 available arms in the bullpen that I don't think anyone would trust, even the coach, and put on the spot. And to get fogged out helped us save some arms and ended up eliminating that team from postseason contention the next night.
Man, thank goodness for the fog. This is David Fine with the Lansing Lugnuts. Yeah, I can imagine. I usually get creeped out by fog. I enjoy it every now and then, but sometimes, especially if you're driving, I dread it. But hey, outstanding. The Lansing Lugnuts start up a 3-game series against the Great Lakes Loons tonight. Final 3 games of the first half. What can be gained for the Lugnuts?
I think winning the division is the most obvious thing, Jesse. So the Lugnuts right now are 2 games up on the Loons heading into this final 3-game stretch of the season, of the first half, beg your pardon. So Lugnuts win tonight, they would be 3 games up with 2 games left, and that means the Lugnuts clinch the division.
Beautiful. Find David Fine on Twitter @RealDavidFine. David, thank you very much for sharing your time.
Hey, thanks, Jesse. See you in a little bit.
Let's close up on Around the Nest with an interview. Jason Leblebichian was not doing too much with A-Advance Dunedin. Came on down to the Lansing Lugnuts, and he hit 5 home runs in his first 11 games with the team. I caught up with Jason just the other day.
Jason, what's your role with this team?
You know, it's just to continue with what they've been doing in their winning ways. I'm not coming here to, take over the team or, be a strong leader or anything like that. Definitely I'm going to play the game the right way and try and lead that way, but, this team's had success so far, and I just hope to help it out and continue to play with these guys and then hopefully make the playoffs.
What makes the Lugnuts this year so successful?
They just have a lot of gamers on this team. Got a lot of guys that don't quit. There's times, especially early in the game, we'll be down and, no one comes in the dugout and there's no panic. Guys know that eventually we're going to bounce back. We're going to scrap away, get a couple runs, and be right back in it.
I remember last year you batted every single spot in the order, 1 through 9. How does that change when you come up to home plate? Let's say you're a leadoff man, or let's say you're batting middle of the order.
You have one job to do as a hitter, and that's just get a good pitch and put your A swing on it and barrel it up. And, no matter where you're hitting, obviously certain situations it dictates, different things. Like leading off, you have to see more pitches and things like that. But, a lot of times knowing where you're hitting dictates how they're going to pitch you. Hitting 3 and 4, you're probably going to see more off-speed pitches and things like that. But for the most part, it's just sticking to your approach and getting a good pitch.
Is there something you worked on in the off season?
I started to have a lot of success at the end of last year, especially that last month, and a lot of it was a timing thing. So I just continued with that and trusting my, like we like to call it, my A swing. A lot of it was I would prepare my swing to see the ball, but I wasn't ready to hit. And now it's kind of preparing to be ready to hit as I'm seeing the ball, and that's kind of been the difference.
Tell me more about the A swing. How many swings does a hitter have?
A lot of times we manipulate the barrel based on where the pitch is and things like that, trying to go the other way. But, you practice this swing of yours, whatever it may be. The one swing that you trust, the swing you feel the most, and no matter what pitch it is, no matter where it is, that swing has to be the swing you put on the ball. And, hopefully with the practice it translates into the games and you show success from it.
So how much at the plate is about you, and how much of it is about what the pitcher's trying to do?
I guess it's a little bit of both. The situation dictates what the pitcher's trying to do to us, obviously. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just competing. And like I said earlier, just getting a good pitch and sticking to your approach. A lot of times, when you get yourself out, it's when you're chasing stuff. It's when a pitch you can't hit. So it's just staying mentally strong, knowing what the guy's throwing, knowing what counts he might be throwing certain pitches and things like that. And just getting the pitch that you want to swing at, and like I said, getting the barrel on it and hoping for the best.
In your first couple of professional seasons, you had to keep your suitcase ready.
Mm-hmm.
You moved up and down the ladder. Last year we had you for a full year, and it really seemed like by the end of the season you stepped up and did whatever you could for the ball club. Was there a difference staying with the team for a full season?
Absolutely, and a lot of it's just chemistry with the guys. Especially my first couple of years, I would keep moving up, and that was the first year I was drafted, and I didn't know any of the guys. So it's definitely a difference playing with guys you're comfortable with, especially being a middle infielder at times. Having that connection with the second baseman or the shortstop, knowing what each other does, knowing how they work, things like that, makes a big difference. But it definitely is nice to stick with the team and kind of play out the year with them. And also a great part is to see other guys develop and talk about them, and you get comfortable to the point where you could help each other out, and that's when it gets really fun.
Well, let me pursue that point. Which players have you seen develop and how?
Oh, definitely, Matt Dean, obviously. I played with him in Bluefield his first year, and ever since then he's definitely taken off, showed a lot of confidence at the plate, things like that. Lugo, absolutely, especially defensively. I mean, he's playing great defense up there in Dunedin, and things like that. And another guy that has shown a lot of improvement is DJ Davis this year. Obviously, I haven't seen him much, only for about a week, but he just shows up, and now he knows what he's doing, and he's showing a lot of confidence at the plate and things like that, and it's really cool to see him develop.
Jason Leblebijian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, back on Around the Nest, and it's time to wrap up another show this week. Thank you very much for joining us. You can find us on iTunes, also on SoundCloud, on YouTube, aroundthenest.mlblogs.com. I'm with the Lansing Lugnuts, and I thank you very much for keeping us company. Whatever you'd like for us to talk about with regard to the minor leagues, things are about to get a little bit more busy. As the short season leagues open up in Bluefield and Vancouver, the draft picks will be in action from this past June. Earl Burrell III was just assigned to the Vancouver Canadians. We'll see if they can get their way right back to the Northwest League Championship Series. And Rob Fay can give us a call and join us to give us all the insights from the NWL. Well, for Triple-A voice Ben Wagner, Double-A voice Tom Gauthier, and Single-A voice David Fine, I am Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, and this has been Around the Nest. Enjoy the baseball. Enjoy the baseball. Enjoy the baseball. Enjoy the baseball. Enjoy the baseball.